Hello and welcome to my vlog of this, the first week of November 2021. Now before I get into this, just to make you all aware, especially to those non-UK viewers, this is the weekend of what we call Bonfire Night in Britain. So if you can hear lots of explosions going off in the background, that's just my neighbours setting off fireworks. It's not the French invading, though that does occasionally happen. And we have got a bit of a dispute with them at the moment over fishing, I believe. So the invasion may be imminent, but it's certainly not happening at the moment. In our very unusual British way, we are currently celebrating the hanging, drawing and quartering of a chap several hundred years ago who tried to blow up some politicians. So that's what we all get up to in the first week of November. It's like our equivalent of Independence Day, apart from we celebrate that pretty horrific thing as opposed to being free and all that good stuff. So just one of the quirks of living in a society that's really quite old. We celebrate some rather weird and wonderful things. Anyway, let's get on to the topic at hand. So the first thing to discuss today is the BattleTech news going on in and around the world at the moment. Last week it was relatively sparse. This week isn't much better. There's a couple of things going on, but not that much. First point to note is that I believe that the poor Australians and New Zealanders are still having trouble with the Kickstarter. I'm still seeing a lot of comments on the Kickstarter thread about people just not actually getting their Kickstarters, which is starting to get into the realm of traumatic, I'd imagine, at this point for those poor people, because it sounds very much like, if not the vast majority, then probably everybody has now got their Kickstarters in the US and Europe. I'm not 100% sure about that, but given I got mine like over 2 months ago, yeah, it's over 2 months ago now. Yeah, it's not good. Catalyst are also seemingly gone underground a little bit. The comms have stopped. I don't think they've released anything on their Kickstarter page for over a month now. And I'm not sure if they're kind of dealing with a backlog of upset Kickstarter backers getting in contact with them. I'm not sure what's going on that front, but I would imagine that Catalyst are very, very disappointed about this as well. I said that in the last video. I'm going to get onto that because my topic today deals with that topic a little bit, but yeah, I think it is just a crying shame, and I just hope it doesn't alienate any of the fan base over there, because I do believe that BattleTech is really quite healthy in Australia and New Zealand, and hopefully this doesn't have an impact on that. Though because I'm not really impacted on it, I can't really have an opinion other than to say it's just a crying shame, and I hope it resolves itself very, very soon. What else have I got on this list? Yes, okay, second up, this is the kind of one, I suppose, like glimmer of hope, though not for me, which I'll get into in a second when I've said this. But I did see today that, I don't know, this might have been going on for a while. I just saw someone post it on Twitter, so it may have been something that cropped up quite a while ago, but it's certainly news to me. But Barnes & Noble have started to allow pre-orders for the Wolf's Dragoon Assault Star, which, by my reckoning, will be released on December the 15th. So that's just over a month away, just in time for Christmas. The very sad thing for me is that, given that I live in Western Europe, Barnes & Noble simply do not seem to ship to Western Europe. They seem to ship to all manner of weird and wonderful countries. I saw like Albania on there, but they won't supply to or ship to like UK, France, Italy, Germany. I'm guessing tax reasons, but I've got no idea. I don't think I've ever come across that before with like a major star. I mean, I've heard of Barnes & Noble, right? Like, they're a famous company. I'm not sure why this is a thing, but I think that's quite sad because it doesn't look like any of the retailers over here are stocking them. I certainly would have bought that. I'm not at all bothered about anything in there apart from the Annihilator, which is the kind of set piece mech that you get in there, the 100-tonner. You also get a Blackjack, an Archer, a Timberwolf, and a Rifleman. I either own or will be owning all of those shortly. And yeah, I mean, the Blackjack and the Rifleman, not very well known for being very good mechs. Not on tabletop anyway, because they, you know, like the Blackjack in particular with its AC2s, which in like core BattleTech lore are just next to useless. Got very good range, but they only do 2 points of damage. I personally buff that. I usually play it, depending on scenarios and situations, they'll either do 3 or 4 damage, because just the weight that you get, like an AC2 is, just for it to deliver that tiny level of damage is just pathetic. I mean, I suppose you can argue that you can do like crit seeking with that, because you obviously, you know, if you've got like a mech with 4 AC2s on there, you do 4 separate shots, so there's chance of criticals, that kind of stuff. So I'm sure there is some kind of like balanced mechanic that the original game designers built into that, but for me, it just makes the game drag. Like, it just means that, you know, you can never start to chew into a mech if you've got mechs on there like a Blackjack, which are predominantly going to be using their AC2s. So anyway, that's a massive tangent there. But yeah, I'm not, cut a long story short, I'm not that bothered about anything else in there. Would have been nice for another Timberwolf or 2. I think I would have gone for that. I might have swapped some of the mechs out in my clan forces, because I've kind of got a core of 40. Oh, there's a big explosion. There's a core of like 40 mechs across. Is it 40? 10? Yes, it's 40. 4 different clans. Each clan has 10 mechs and 2 elementals in my forces. And some of those mechs I'm really not keen on. So I probably would have like skipped a couple of those out and just sold them for like a couple of quid on eBay, and then replaced them with a couple of Timberwolves, because I don't really have that many Timberwolves. I think I only got 2 overall. I really wanted some more in the like the salvage packs that we got with the Kickstarter, but I just didn't get any. Got some other nice mechs in there. Got like a couple of Thors. I got loads of. I think I got like 16 salvage boxes or something crazy like that. So, but I just didn't get a Timberwolf, which was a bit of a shame. So, yeah, that would be the other mech in there that I would have used, but I just wanted a couple of Annihilators, because it's just a beautiful looking Cthulhu monster of a mech. Very, very weird and wonderful. It's nefarious for being like ridiculously slow, but the variants that I've played of it, it usually rocks like 4 UAC 10 cannons, so it can be an absolute monster on the battlefield. So, and it just, you know, it's another 100-tonner that I don't have in the new sculpts. So, would have really liked that. I probably would have bought a couple of them, but I can't get it delivered, unfortunately. So, hey-ho, it might be that at some time over the next year I can pick up the Annihilator somewhere, like on eBay. Maybe like a gaming company over here do like a retail version of it. Who knows? But it looks like it's just been sold at Barnes & Noble. I don't know if it's exclusive to them. It might be. In which case, it's going to be very difficult for me to get hold of, and for anyone else in Western Europe. But this isn't all about me. This is predominantly a news service in the first instance. So if you are in the US or Albania or any of these other countries that they do deliver to, highly recommend putting your order in from that. It will be well worth it. It's only $30 as well, so $30 for 5 mechs I think is very, very good value, especially when one of those is quite almost like a limited edition 100-tonner. So that's basically the only news that I've seen. I don't even know if that's news, to be honest, because this may have been on pre-order at Barnes & Noble for months and I've just not seen it. But given that they've still look like they've got them on pre-order, so they're presumably getting them at some time in stock. It's not, you know, gone. You know, you don't get the whole horrible available on back order, which means you're never going to get it thing. So if you order that today and you're in the US, you should get it before Christmas, I'd imagine. Finally, as well, this isn't so much news as it is a little prediction. I get a feeling that Catalyst Games are going to announce something quite big over the next couple of months. I don't know why I think this. I think it might be, it's probably going to be the next Kickstarter. There is a part of me that just doesn't want them to do another Kickstarter, because I said this on a previous video. If you've watched anything that I've done before, I talk a bit about how I think Catalyst need to move away from Kickstarters and move more towards retail. And I think this would be a good opportunity for them to do that. Like, I understand there are financing issues with that, but I think given, yeah, I just hope that somebody higher up in, say, Tops, which obviously own the IP to BattleTech, and they license it out to Catalyst Games. I just hope they understand what they've got now with BattleTech, that they literally can't keep up with demand. Like, you see that everywhere. I am so concerned about demand now, and I don't make any apology for this. I felt a bit bad about it at the time, but now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, no, it's actually a sensible decision. I have duplicate ordered every other mech that I need. So I still need 9 lance packs, and I bought them all twice. Right? I bought one with one company in Canada, and I've subsequently gone and found all the pre-orders from model shops and hobby shops in the UK, and just bought the same things, because I'm convinced that there's going to be a supply drama over this. And to be honest, the cost has got no bearing on me, because if it all goes well and I get all 18 lance packs, I'll keep 9 of them, and I'll either sell or give away 9 of them. I despise eBay scalpers, whatever they call themselves. Evil, wicked people. So I certainly won't be doing that. I'll probably just be putting it up like for retail price on eBay, and then just first come, first served. I'm not comfortable doing it any other way. I really have an issue with people like putting lance packs on there for, like, I don't know, seem like some go up for like £95, £100. I've said this in the past, I'm an incredible hypocrite, because I have actually bought those in the past, which I have very differing thoughts on whether that's good or bad. I mean, it's taking me out of the supply chain, because it means that I don't then go and buy one at retail, which means somebody else can buy it. It's almost the same premise that people talk about with private schooling. Like, generally, most people, like politicians, don't like the concept of private schooling, because it creates like a 2-tier system. But then what private schools turn around and say is, well, we take, I don't know whatever percentage it is, it's different for every country, so it might be 8% of kids get privately educated. You're taking that 8% out of the system, which means that other kids have those resources directed to them. So that's kind of the argument, philosophically. It's not my opinion. It's not my opinion or anything like that. It's just, I think, what they say. And I think I kind of philosophize on the same way for BattleTech. Like, if I get it quickly, or if I buy duplicate packs, I know that I'm not going to be the eBay scalper. I'm not going to be the one kind of buying everything at retail and then selling on at high prices. So it's probably better for like, just in my tiny little corner of BattleTech that I occupy, I think it's more healthy to do that, as opposed to the people that will go and buy, hundreds of them and then sell them on for like 3-4 times the value, and basically just monetize the community, which is a pretty rotten thing to do. And if you are involved in doing things like that, then very, very bad form. Not good behaviour. I was watching the Death from Above. I love those guys. Like, they are so brilliant at what they do. They've just done like reviews of all the lance packs and the star packs from Wave 2. And I didn't see this, but apparently one of the guys on there was saying that someone had like listed like all the Wave 1 and Wave 2 mechs, I don't know how many, on eBay for like $5,000. And I'm like, no, how do you like sleep at night? I mean, I kind of get it if you're not involved in the community, but presumably this person is. And they're just completely rinsing somebody. Although saying that, I mean, I suppose if you're going to spend $5,000 on that, then you must have more money than sense. Especially given that you can just exercise a bit of patience, given you know it's going to go to retail. So it would be more stupidity, I think, more than anything else doing that. But I just think people like that are just so greedy. I can't get into that mindset at all. Don't like it. And I think that all kind of segues me into the topic today, because scalping is kind of a factor in this. And what I'm going to talk about is Catalyst games, like the good and the bad. Has Catalyst Games been good for BattleTech? Has it been bad for BattleTech? Obviously, there's a mixture, as with everything in life. There's good and bad. But I just wanted to I've just made a list here of things that I think Catalyst Games do very, very well and things that they do very, very badly. And then maybe not very badly, slightly badly. I don't think they do anything very badly. And then I'll give like a synopsis of what I think their overall kind of meaning is to the game and the kind of community at large, things like that. So what I'll go good news first, because I think you know from me, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I am a big fan of Catalyst. So it's not going to come as a shock that the summary that I do will be relatively quite positive. So we'll do the, what's it called, the bad news sandwich, good, bad, good, that kind of thing. So we'll deal with the good first. And the good is actually quite obvious in a lot of ways because they really have excelled at this, and that's in Mech Design. Now I know I've come across like articles and people on Twitter and people on forums and things like that bemoaning the new plastics. I think that, and I can't be sure about this because it seems like quite a niche area within the community. I think they see it a little bit as like the dumbing down of BattleTech. I inherently disagree with that. I think the new plastic is superb. Having just painted like, well over 100 of them, I think like 130 of them over the last few months. They are a joy to paint. The metal models are just, they're a very mixed bag. And I say that like with the knowledge that no criticism, and I say this constantly if I refer to this topic, this isn't a criticism of Ironwind or Relpartha. Like, they have constantly got things in stock, so they are to be lauded and credited for actually having BattleTech available to us. And I very often will go and like supplement my forces with metal mechs or combined arms or things like that. But these are companies which are relatively small and do like, you know, they basically do like order to demand. So you put your order in and then they'll have some lying around, or they'll probably do like remodels of it every couple of like months. I'm not sure how the model works. Presume that's how it is. The mechs that I tend to get off them tend to be quite old still. So I think Relpartha have still got like maybe shelves full of mechs from like the 80s and 90s. You can tell because on the metal sculpts there's the cast date is put on their like base. So quite regularly you'll get a mech from there and it'll say 1997 or 2001 or something like that. So yeah, presumably wherever their company is, they've just got shelves of BattleTech mechs going back into the ages, which is quite sad in some ways that they didn't sell out of all those, but such is life. But one of the issues is, and this doesn't really apply to me because I've painted a lot of figures, so I kind of know how to paint them and how to kind of use the little magical tricks to, you know, make things look like tabletop ready. So I can take any kind of metal mech and just make it completely okay. I think a lot of people struggle with that though, because washes are really, really tough to get to work on metal mechs because they don't have like the recesses and the detail that like plastic models have. So for a modern audience and going forward, I think that the way that Catalyst have done this, putting them in those little superb lance packs and star packs, which can be boxed up and put to retail, you can't do that with like Relpartha models because they just come in little baggies. So what you're going to do, you're going to sell it at like a retail store. They're going to have to put like lots of like hooks so they can hang everything on. Like for, you know, like Games Workshop used to look back in the day, right? Like Games Workshop years ago, it just used to be like lots of little like metal models in bags. And then they had like the occasional box set. Well, they had a lot of box sets actually, but they usually sat beside each other. You can't ask anyone at retail to kind of rebuild their entire shelving units. That's not going to wash. I've even heard in the past Catalyst say that they did quite a lot of research on what the retail wanted, what the retail side wanted. So, you know, to keep the game on the shelf, for instance, it had to be like a certain dimension. If it was like bigger than that, then they'd struggle to get it on shelves. It's why a Game of Armored Combat and the Clan Invasion, like for want of a better term, expansion pack, they're the same size, they're small. They're nice and concise. It's a very, very like good cardboard as well, so it's really like you really have to like take a sledgehammer to smash that thing up, so it's not flimsy. And it's just like I said, in terms of like their idea of how a modern audience views a gaming system and wanting to engage the gaming system, I think Catalyst do a superb job on that. And you know, it also factoring into that, this is a huge factor, Catalyst is such a reasonable company when it comes to price. I mean, and I've said this a few times previously on these recordings, I think that it basically works out about approximately £5 or $5 a mech. And for me, that's too cheap. Given that like Ralpartha will sell like medium and light mechs for like £5 or £6. And usually if you get into like heavy and assaults, they'll go between like 8 and 11. Depends on the mech. And that makes sense because the assault mechs are bigger. So they take more like metal. So they're going to be a little bit more expensive. They might have also, when you're thinking about like molding and paying for things that are effectively very cheap in terms of their like physical product, it's not that you're paying for, it's actually the molds. The molds cost a lot of money. You know, the things that they like pour the metal or the plastic resin into, they cost an absolute fortune. That's what Catalyst have just, you know, paid for and done. That's what all the factories out in Asia have been doing. So, you know, like you're paying for, again, for the IP and those molds as opposed to the plastic product itself. But £5 for me, I think they could easily get away with you know, costing that up a little bit more. You can kind of tell, and I think there's because of all the scalping on eBay, and I think there's kind of a sweet spot to get between like your retail price and demand prices. You don't want to go in at what you call demand prices because a lot of people in like BattleTech are going to be like of my age and have disposable income. Excuse me. Oh, frog in my throat. And we can basically just buy up all the stock. So they could put them at like $40 or £40 and I'd still pay that. And we don't want to do that because that will really alienate the young audiences. But there is a sweet spot, I think, between people, you know, scalping things for ridiculous prices on eBay and then really quite low retail prices, like incredibly low. If you look at like other gaming systems, famously like Games Workshop, they will very regularly like really overcharge on their product in the knowledge that when it does get to retail, the retailer will give like 20% off. So they will bump their price up in the knowledge that that retail will be a little bit less. It's complicated how it works, but I think they don't have to go like full Games Workshop, but I think there is a happy medium. And I think having like a lance of 4 mechs for say £27, I think would be completely reasonable. Especially because it is a niche product still. This isn't like mass produced. It's not like Games Workshop where they've just got a factory on site just churning this thing out constantly, you know, over and over again to fulfill demand. They can only do this like maybe what at the moment it's basically been once a year, where they've got China to do this like huge like factory line in plastic goods, and then most of it gets used for the Kickstarter, and then they'll have a lot of excess for retail. And once that's gone, it's gone until they go out and purchase it again. So I think part of the good side of BattleTech is also the good thing, sorry, that Catalyst are doing with BattleTech is that they are keeping it affordable. Another thing that I think really ties into that in terms of like, you know, having one company doing this and like really revolutionizing like how far they can take these models and the molds and the like the plastic, you know, how good they are, how easy they are to paint, how detailed they are. One thing that they've really been able to fix is the scaling problem. And I always have an issue with this in BattleTech and have for years and years. In fact, I remember like back in the 90s, it used to really annoy me, you know, when I had like my little like metal mechs, because they just all look the wrong size. For instance, you can sometimes have like a 100-ton mech on the field of play that doesn't look that much bigger than like a 75-ton mech. Or you can have like a really tall 30-ton mech. Like it just becomes farcical. And okay, I say farcical, like you can still play the game, you can still have fun with it. But if you really want to immerse yourself into it, you want to see that 100-ton mech is an absolute juggernaut beast that no one's going to mess with. And the 20-ton mech is basically just going to like run around its ankles and trying to get a decent shot off. I always felt with the scaling, when they had multiple companies doing this, it was so bad that sometimes you wouldn't be able to tell which were assault mechs and which ones were medium mechs. Certain medium mechs as well, or heavy mechs, looked like light mechs. I mean, it's just bizarre, and there was obviously no like consistency. One thing that I think Catalyst have nailed to the nth degree is the scaling, especially in the assault mechs. Like, the assault mechs just look monstrous, you know, and whether it's like something like a longbow or a stalker, going up to the 100-tonners, like you know, like the Atlas, they just look their tonnage now. And I occasionally, I was playing a game, like a tester game the other day, and I had on there an Atlas and a Mongoose, and like, it looked like the Mongoose looks like a tank next to it. Like, it's like literally this Atlas just dominates the entire spectrum of the game. And I just love that. I love it that, like, you can just tell, you could just come into that game and sit down and be like, yep, that's the baddest boy on the field. Oh, that's debatable, actually, because, you know, the Atlas isn't actually the best mech on the field, but it certainly looks the most intimidating. It's got that big skull, like, face. And the Mongoose just looks so cute next to it, like it is darting around. But that is the whole point. Like, it transfers that like symbolism of what's going on the battlefield direct to your brain and to the other player's brain. That's something to watch out for, and that's something that's going to be like more skirmishy. And I love that, like, immersion in a game. It gives so much more character, as opposed to like a Mongoose maybe being like, I don't know, over half the size of an Atlas, and you're just thinking, well, what is that? That's what? Like, is that a 60-ton mech? 'Cause it looks half the size of a 100-tonner. You just don't get that with Catalyst. And I think that's like a very, very amazing thing that they have done. Even now, I mean, I supplement my my forces with metal models, and I like that. I like the extra flavour that it gives, but it's very, very noticeable. It's especially noticeable for, like, for instance, I've got a Lancelot, which is a 60-ton mech, in my mercenary force, which is the Dust Counters, like the name of this channel. And I love the Lancelot, and I love the old Lancelot model. It's very, like, derpy. It's got, like, really skinny legs. It just looks really funny. But when it's literally the only old model I've now got in the mercenary unit. All the other mercenary mechs have been upgraded to the new Catalyst models, but I just kept the Lancelot in there, and it looks like a light mech compared to all the other mechs. And I was kind of thinking, how would I, like, write my way around that? And I'm guessing, because BattleTech is such a diverse, huge universe, it would all be like some kind of marketing ploy by a factory somewhere to say, oh yes, this is 60 tons of mech. Actually, maybe weighs 40, but it's a different, like, weight format. So it might be like, you know, weights, you know, like we've got it over here, right? Like, we've got US ton and I don't know if they call it European ton or whatever else, but one weighs more than the other. So I kind of factor it in that someone in the marketing somewhere has basically, like, said that this version of the Lancelot is 60 ton when actually it only weighs 45, and it kind of looks like a 45-ton mech. So I think you can kind of write your way around it in an interesting way if you want to be creative about that. But still, it still goes without saying, on the battlefield, if I'm running the Lancelot with other, like, say, medium or light mechs, it doesn't inherently stick out as a heavy mech. Whereas if you run something alongside it, say, like a catapult, like the new version of the new catapult looks like a heavy mech. It's chunky, it's big, like, it looks maybe 15 tons heavier than the Lancelot, which is, again, a problem in scaling. But having little things in there, having, like, older models in there that are quirks and that are points of interest and give a little bit more flavour, I like. What I don't like is when everything, like, if you had, like, the entire Ralpatha model set and the 100-ton mechs are all at different levels, and some of them look maybe like they could be 80 tons and some of them look like they could be 115 tons because they're just ridiculously chunky. I don't like that. I like it that somebody somewhere at Catalyst has kind of done a cross-reference against all the weight classes, and thought like, okay, well, this is a 60-ton mech, ergo it needs to have this level of chunk on the leg, and it needs to have this level of chunk on the torso, and then this is a tiny 20-ton mech, and it's just really skinny, and it's got like a really flimsy little cockpit, and it just looks like, you know, if you gave it like a rotator, it could be a helicopter with legs, right? It's like that small. I love that. I love that side of it. I love how Catalyst have done that. It's made such a difference, for me anyway, especially, excuse me, when I look at everything in the display cases. It just looks so great when you've got like the, you know, the heavier mechs against the lighter mechs. Like the difference just gives it so much colour. So that's really the main like good point I think on Catalyst, and they've really like knocked that out of the park. The mech designs are just absolutely superb. The other two reasons is something that I think we will all take for granted. You will especially take this for granted if you only deal with Catalyst, because a lot of other companies in this sphere do not do what they do. And there's two factors really which I think give Catalyst really, really great, or give us a really great experience with BattleTech. And the first one is that it is a game like made by gamers for gamers, and you can very much see that. For instance, they don't just like retcon things in BattleTech. They don't, for instance, bring out new rule sets every few years, which means that like you can have books going back 30 years now, which are still completely relevant. Yes, they will do updates, but they never like kibosh or retcon anything. Not that I can see. There might be a couple of things they've done, I'm not too sure, but I can always, like, I can pick up books from, and I still do. I mean, I bought a couple of BattleTech books this week, and, you know, from like the late 80s, and they're completely relevant. And you can pick those up, flick through them, and you can understand all the kind of baseline stats, the weaponry, everything like that still exists. They build on it, they bring out new variants of mechs, they obviously drive the narrative forward. But overall, that is a real like symbol to me that this is a game made by gamers for gamers. Because if it was a game created by people who were interested in money for gamers, we'd probably on version 10 now of BattleTech, and you'd have to like update your rule set every few years. We don't have to go through that, which is hugely beneficial and means that there's like a direct lineage in that game. So if you were, and I certainly feel that because I played BattleTech quite a bit in the 90s, and then basically took what, like an 18-year hiatus or something like that. I'm now back into it, and I feel like I can just slipstream right back in there. There's no like drama. I'm not thinking, oh my god, I've got to learn like a whole new rule system and I don't like it. It's very, very familiar to me. And, you know, that means then that you can really pick and choose your BattleTech experience. And I've spoken about this multiple times before, that my kind of bag is between 3025 and 3067. Some people might say, well, I really like the Dark Age stuff. Some people might just play in the current era, which is Ilkhan, which is around 3150. And there's no kind of, for want of a better term, discrimination against that. No one's kind of saying, oh, you can't play that bit. Like the rules have moved on massively. You can't rock up at like a tournament and play this. As long as it's all predetermined, you can basically say, I'd like to play 3025 rules because there's certain equipment sets then that you'd use. It's kind of before the whole renaissance in like BattleTech technology. So you're using like single heat seats and pretty ropey equipment. I love that. I mean, that to me is like a glorious part to play in BattleTech. But then again, equally, I really like the Fedcom Civil War, where the technology is like way in advance of that. And it's only, what, like 40, 50 years later. So, you know, for me, that's a big sign, like a signpost saying that these are not people who are going to prioritise like money and the corporatization of the IP over the fan base. I've already touched on something. You can tell by the prices. I touched on that earlier. That you know, when they're doing like $5 a mech, I think they could easily get away with doing like $10 a mech, given the limited supply that they've got. Remember, if you know anything about economics, you'll know how supply and demand works. The demand for BattleTech is up here, and the supply is like here. Ergo, the price should be very reflective of that, and they don't. They basically keep that price to a very, very like conscientiously low level. Last point on what I'd consider making them really good, and this is another thing that I think a lot of people will take for granted, is that they are very, very good at comms. Now, I know there'll be people in Australia and New Zealand maybe disputing that point, but I can only tell you that from dealing with quite a lot of like gaming companies in the past, predominantly Games Workshop have gone through like a multitude of different like I suppose like theories on communication. So there was a point where they never spoke to anyone. They didn't have any social media pages. Then they kind of fixed that and got like a little bit better. Now I think a lot of people are perceiving it like they've kind of regressed. And they've got like things like Warhammer Community, which is a website which I constantly find like errors in and problems in. Now, I'm not necessarily directing heat at those people because they've got a ton of stuff to send out, and you know, I work in that environment as well, so I know how like highly pressured it is. But what I'm saying is like they do tend to get a lot of like scorn for their lack of communication. Some people think that they just like outright lie. I don't believe that for a second, but some people will say like, well, they said that this came in the box and now it doesn't. That's always going to be like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing in a company. That always goes on. If you work for a big company, you know that will happen all the time. So I don't ever think it's anything like mischievous or nasty. It's just that the comms that Games Workshop put out can be slightly dicey sometimes. With Catalyst, they still do a like a monthly like forum type thing on YouTube where like the designers of the game, the people that sort out like all the editing of the books and things like that, will kind of just do a like an update on a topic. They've done, I think, maybe like 10 of these over the last year. And it can be anything from like the state of the narrative in BattleTech to like Kickstarter news to all manner of different things. And that's the people that run the company, right? And they do that. And these things are pretty long. They usually last like 2 or 3 hours. And they open up questions to the forums. When was the last, if you work with Games Workshop, when was the last time that the Games Workshop had like the CEO come out and actually do like a Q&A session with fans? Yeah, it doesn't happen. So, you know, like it's something where, again, I think we take it for granted because a lot of like IPs in gaming just will not do things like that. It can usually be quite like a closed circuit. They don't really want to interact with like the fan base because they know that that can generate more heat. It's in comms, it's kind of a delicate balance to get that. You don't really want to say too much, but then again, you don't want to be seen as like being locked away like the Wizard of Oz and, you know, behind a curtain pulling strings and not engaging. So it is a very complex like dynamic, is communications. But I think speaking as someone who works at quite a high level communications, I think Catalyst do a very good job. The Kickstarter as well, I mean, not recently, they've basically gone underground for a month, but I think that's because they probably they don't want to put any more fuel on that fire. And I'm hoping that they're using this time as well to kind of respond to the backlog of emails. But for such a small firm, and remember Catalyst are a very, very small company, I think that when they do these like updates, they tend to be very transparent. They try to give a lot of data. If I was their head of comms, I'd probably say they give too much data. I'd probably want to rein that in a little bit and control the messaging a little bit more, which would obviously really annoy the fans, but it'd probably be better for the company. So they're kind of, what I'm saying is they probably go in from the heart more from the head. And that's not always a bad thing. I think in terms of like your like brand appeal, I think that gives a lot more credence. Like you'll have people like me saying things like, well, they're very open and transparent. You don't get that if you over corporatize it. If you've just got like a mouthpiece who just kind of like rattles off and says like X, Y, and Z without really saying too much, people see through that usually. It happens all the time in gaming. You'll see it if you watch like any of like the forums for like computer games. I watch them because I'm interested in that subject, and as soon as someone gets on the stage and it looks all like choreographed and like a big corporate stage show, I'm like, this is awful. You're not going to learn anything from that. But I do think there is like a balance that you can get between like having a human communication and keeping it like a little bit official as well, and not giving your hand, like not playing your hand too much. And I think that overall that means that Catalyst do an incredible job, to be honest. I think those 3 factors really kind of stand in their favour. This wouldn't be a balanced video though if I didn't touch on the bad of Catalyst, and there are a couple of issues as well. I've already touched on some of these in either previous videos or in this one. The first one, and this is something that just, it is infuriating, but I'll talk about why I think we need to be a little bit patient with this. But the first major issue is supply problems. If you have dabbled in BattleTech for whether it's 6 months or 30 years, you'll know that getting hold of this new catalyst stock, which everybody wants, is really, really difficult. And yes, they're putting thousands of these to retail, but I think we're all going to be really kind of interested to see how quickly these things sell out. I certainly am. I was a lot more optimistic about it a couple of months ago, but I'm finally, I think, coming to the realization that they are gonna sell out quite quickly. I did estimate originally that I think they do it by like mid next year. I'm not sure anymore. I probably don't even want to make a prediction because it's just such a complex issue, and they've also like done a bit of a side like winder tactic by trickling the box sets out as opposed to just dumping everything in November, which I do think is a good idea. But then that means that like, I mean, I'm guessing they're doing that just to kind of stifle demand and to keep things back so that they can then next year go back to market and give retail companies some more produce to sell. So they're not going to get all that heat from people saying, "Where's all the products? The shop, the shelves are all bare of BattleTech products," that kind of thing. So it is complex, but I think that, and I've said this previously. I keep saying I said this previously because I did. I touched on it in a previous video, but I think like in a sense, they really kind of need to move away from like the Kickstarter model now. They need to go to tops. They need to say, look, our figures for selling are insane. Like, look, we can't get enough of this stuff. Give us some money, right? Like it's no use just trying to fund these things directly from your audience on Kickstarters. And Kickstarters are tricky. They're going to get even trickier with all the supply problems going on in the world at the moment, like the international shipping crisis. We all know about these things, and everyone's okay with it until you don't get your Kickstarter, and then everyone usually kicks off. So I think like if I were like the guys at Catalyst now, I'd be using all this empirical data that they've got on sales and calling a meeting with like whoever the sales director is at Tops and just saying, look, give us $5 million, right? Just front that up for us. We will then go and like get a full-time factory somewhere in Asia just to kind of roll out stock for us. We'll create some kind of deal with it, not exclusively, but like we'll get them on a rolling like model. We might even like just bypass the whole like shipping thing and just spend whatever crazy price it would crazy price it would be to get things flown in. Have hubs in like, and they do this already, but have hubs in like Asia, Australia, Europe, US, South America, where you can basically like deal with this. Have like they've got Barnes and Noble in the US, right? Like, which is great. It's great. There's a retail outlet who are going to be stocking this on the shelves, but we can't get it in Western Europe. Not sure if you can get it in Australia. No idea. But over here, I can't envisage anyone outside gaming like shops stocking BattleTech, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, because I don't think it's that big, especially it probably is in Germany. I think Germany's got like a really vibrant market for BattleTech. The UK probably not so much, or not yet anywhere. So it's not a problem for it to be in gaming stores. But I think, like, having spoken to a few gaming stores now, they are lamenting the fact that they've kind of got all this BattleTech stuff on pre-order and it's sold out like that, like super quick. And they're like, yeah, we could have like moved, like we think another 80 of these things, and that's just like from each independent store. So it's not like there's only one store that stock it. This is from like multiple stores who have just like they put things out for pre-order. They might have 10 things available, and in 3 days all 10 are sold. Now, I can tell you from experience, having bought a lot of Games Workshop products over the last like couple of years, where they'll do limited release stuff, BattleTech moves faster than Games Workshop products. Maybe not for like 40k stuff. I think that's such a huge thing, and the demand's so high for it. I think that will probably sell out. But for instance, I was keeping tracks on. I said this in the previous video. I recently bought Blood Bowl and got all the teams for Blood Bowl. And my like go-to place for buying hobby stuff, when I first kind of went on there, they had like 5 editions of Season 2 Blood Bowl. I basically kept it on ice for a couple of weeks. By the time I went back to it, they had 2 left. So, you know, they'd gone from like 5 to 2 in like 3 weeks. The BattleTech stuff was going from like 15 to 1 in like 5 days. Right? So and that's your signifier, right? It's not how much you necessarily sell. It's the rate on the pre-orders. Like if you know that people, like I've done this with this hobby shop, right? I've done it with this Canadian company that I went to buy the stock from, and I've done it in the UK now. I am paying for things that I won't get for 5 months. That means that you're into it. And if I'm not the only one doing that, if there are another 20 people doing that, and it's 20 people dropping, you know, upwards of several £100s on this product, that's a product on fire. You know, that's something that's got high level demand. And I really, really hope that Catalyst start, again, I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but I've worked at quite a high level of business and business development, and you know, through comms, but I know quite a lot about business intelligence, business development. And you know, when a product is hot, you need to move on it, and they need to go to the people at top and start battering down the door. They need someone in that organization who is going to say, here is our empirical data on sales, you need to back this up. Whatever you need to do, you know, whatever you need to go in there and start shouting at people. I mean, I've had to do that before for like departments. Like you have to go in there, you have to be tough. You have to say, look, there's no wiggle room on this. Like you need to move on it now or you don't move at all. And I think BattleTech has now got what I'd consider a pretty significant momentum behind it. I don't know where that will take. Like the IP, I'd love to think that in 5 years we will be talking about like things like TV shows and you know, like things readily stocked, like book sales going up massively, things like that. I'd love to see that because I really would like to see a challenger company to Games Workshop. The crux of what I'm talking about here, though, is are Catalyst going to be able to do that? And at the moment, I'd say it's in the mix because I think that their ambition for the game, and like I've said before, all the, you know, like what they're doing with the actual plastic products, their ambition with that is phenomenal and brilliant. Their ambition as a company, though, and that's a different matter entirely. For me, and this is going to sound quite offensive, but I'd say it to their face if I met them, it's still a little bit amateur. And I think the whole Kickstarter thing stinks to me as a little bit amateur. I'm not just talking about Catalyst. I'm talking about things in general. Like a lot of companies are starting to use Kickstarter as a marketing technique, which I get, and that seems quite sensible on the face of it. But for me, it actually harms the brand. Like when I'm seeing like Hasbro doing Kickstarters, I'm like, really? This is like a multi-million-pound company. You don't need to do Kickstarter. Like I know they do it for basically marketing purposes because it's an easy way to market your products, and it picks up traction, and a lot of like news outlets will talk about things on Kickstarter. But for me, I'm like, you need to show that you've got what I'd call like the core product, and that you can keep going back and dipping into that core product, getting it on the shelves. You've got like your audience that keep going back and making purchases. And at the moment, I think Catalyst are showing their hand and saying, we don't really know how to do that. Oh, we'll just do another Kickstarter because that's the easy option. Because with Kickstarters, there's no harm, no foul. There's no risk, really. Like you can, if you say, for example, said, well, we'll do a third Kickstarter for BattleTech if we get $1 million, I guarantee to you they'd make $1 million. They've seen that. I mean, just look how much, I think they took over $2.5 million for the previous 2 Kickstarters. So they'd have no trouble making that money. But the problem is, it's what I'd call like limited ambition. Because you do that Kickstarter, it gets put out, everyone gets the product. You then back at stage 1. What you need is like a rolling system of products where you've got company A, factory A making the products. Presumably it'd be in China. You've got a steady flow coming into retail, and you've got those companies in international markets and domestic US markets. Like Barnes & Noble, that's a very good example here. Presumably that is done through Topps as well, because Topps are a trading card company, so I bet you anything they've got a relationship with Barnes & Noble. They might even be owned by the same people, I've got no idea. So they've decided to kind of put their products on those shelves. But if you are ambitious enough, if you push it hard enough, you can start to really kind of gain traction and momentum. And I've seen this from, I worked, before I went to do my degrees, I worked for a regional law firm. And that I kept going back to this law firm. Like every few years, I'd go back and get a job until I kind of graduated and I wanted to make some money. And then I went in there and kind of worked my way up over like a 6 or 7 year period. When I left that law firm, it was the third biggest law firm in the world. So it went from a regional Yorkshire firm to the third biggest law firm on earth. I've seen how it's done. You just need people in there that have got ambition and spice and know how to kind of batter down walls. And I hope that Catalyst either go that route with the people that they've got and start kind of putting themselves in a bit of a, take themselves out of their comfort zone, basically. Stop being gamers and start being business people. And that sounds really harsh because they're obviously good at business, like they're good at marketing, they know how to market this product. But I would highly recommend to them that they start now taking that like stage on and really kind of trying to break that retail enigma, which so far they've not been able to broach. Another point on BAD as well. The first point there, what I said about like retail and ambition and things like that, a lot of that is kind of forgivable in the current market because things have never been, well, not for many, many years. I won't say never been, obviously. We've been through far worse than things like COVID and shipping crisis. But things are really, really problematic at the moment. And I can understand, for instance, why companies would say, we don't want to take risks. So for all I just said previously then, I kind of get that. And sometimes playing safe can be your best bet, or you at least keep your ambition to where you can be in a market where you know there is going to be a supply chain, for instance. So that might be me just being a little bit like too cavalier. Maybe prudence is a good thing. So I would never I'm not directing any heat at Catalyst for their methodology on this. I'd just like to see a little bit more ambition, and I think they can afford a little bit more ambition as well. But again, that issue I think is what I term forgivable. What I term as really not being forgivable, although that might be a bit too harsh, is that the massive problem that I found with BattleTech, having stepped back into it, is it's never been centralized. And what I mean by that is like there are so many like different rule sets and things going on, and like, I mean, God forbid you want to kind of get into everything BattleTech, you need to buy about 18 books, whether it's like the campaign, strategical operations, total warfare book, combined arms, and it's really not very well done. I mean, I've talked about this previously again, a lot of this stuff I talked about previously. Total Warfare is a really messy, sloppy book. I hate to say that because I think it's a lot of good intention in there, but it's just too convoluted and it's not logical. And I was tearing my hair out with that over the summer, trying to kind of figure out like how to do like air warfare, or like use fighter planes. It's just not. There's no logic to it, and it's problematic. Another thing that I think they really suffer from is that they've had these really complex rules over what just the branching term you call battle value. There are two battle values. There's battle value 1 and battle value 2. 2 is generally seen, I think, as a lot better. That's the one I use anyway. But then there are some people that use tonnage. So some people will say, well, we'll run 200 tons against 200 tons. Or worse still, they'll say C-bills. So they'll say like, oh, you can bring 25 million C-bills of mech, and both those two, tonnage and C-bills, are completely unbalanced. Why I think that's problematic is because I really think it stifles the competitive scene. Now, I'm going to speak about this quite quickly because we're coming up to an hour here, so I don't really want to go over that. But the competitive scene in BattleTech, as far as I can see, is pretty much non-existent, which is kind of a nice thing in some ways because it means people are a lot more relaxed. But if you look at other gaming systems, the competitive scene usually drives what's going on. I'll give you a very quick like analysis to that in terms of something Games Workshop do and through my experiences with it. And suffice to say, in the first instance, I am not a competitive player. I've never been to a tournament and played a competitive game. I've played like house rule tournaments, like you might have 4 people in my house and we might all take a team in the Kill Team game, which is a Games Workshop product, and we might do like a playoff. So it's like, you know, you do 2 semi-finals and then a final and a third, fourth playoff, and you play that over the course of the day. So it's basically everyone gets 2 games in. And that's really fun, obviously, but it's not competitive as such. Like, it is, in a sense, because you're kind of trying to win to progress. But it's not like, oh, I'm at this tournament and it's lasting a couple of days and then I go back to the hotel room and sleep on it and have to think about what I'm going to do the next day. I've never done anything like that. But one thing I'd say about the competitive scene is that it really drives the game forward. Even though not many people do it, it adds such a credence and a talking point, a buzz around your game system. And the best example I can think about with that is my experience through Kill Team. Because there are 2 YouTube channels. One's called Glass Half Dead. The other, I can't remember off the top of my head. I've not watched them in a while because I've not got into the second version of Kill Team, and I've no intention to. So I've kind of not kept up to it that much. But the guy who does Glass Half Dead, who's really good, like YouTube channel for Kill Team predominantly, but he does other like 40k stuff as well. He is brilliant at what he does, and he is a competitive player, but he gives so much like data and buzz around the product. Even though it's not something I'd ever do, I've learned more from that guy in regards like how to play a Kill Team, tactics, how to list build, things like that, because the gaming system have put a competitive edge in there which you can utilize, and then people attach onto that and really make it flower. So it's people like him that are driving the actual like buzz of the game. And it's one of the reasons why I think Games Workshop have been absolutely insane to try and like do what they've done recently, which has been quite well publicised. They've had issues, you know, and it's weird this. I don't think it's as bad as everyone says, like, oh, they're going around closing down YouTube channels. But I think what Games Workshop need to realise is that you can put a product out there and then you can let the audience kind of create the buzz around it. It's what you kind of call that like tertiary marketing, and it can be incredibly powerful. And that's what this guy, like the guy who does Glass Half Dead, is doing. He's basically niched into that system. He does like interviews with like other competitive players. He does like reviews from tournaments. He'll do like list building like exercises, how to get the most out of it. I've got no intention of playing that, but I was in not now because they're in version 2 now, but when they were in version 1, if he was bringing a new video out, I was like, ooh, what is he going to talk about this week? Which like gaming system within Kill Team, which Kill Team is he going to discuss? And it was really, really fascinating. And it puts the game on a different level. But you can only do that if the game creates like a really tight regimented system, like a points-based system for teams. Like in Kill Team, you can, in the core book, you can bring 100 points. But kind of the meta says that you can bring a 125. And the meta, the things that the gaming community have figured out is that 125 is the optimum level. That's not the community setting the limit on that. That's just now readily seen. And even me, I've never played at a tournament. I will play 125 if I play Kill Team with somebody. Because I just know from listening to people like Glass Half Dead and other competitive players that generally that's where you get the best game. That's like 150 is too much and the game gets convoluted. 100 isn't enough and it makes the game too tight. 125 is your sweet spot. And what I think Catalyst really need to do with BattleTech is create a codified, centralized system, whether it's on rules or battle value, so that somebody can turn up with a force. It doesn't matter what era they're from. Like it can be, well, I've got my Marauder 2 from this era and this person's got like a Hunchback from 3025 or whatever. But we can still play a game. If we decide in advance we'll play 4,000 points, you know that what you get on the table, whatever your era you're in, is going to be balanced in regards to that other player. And I think Catalyst have been slightly guilty of this, that they've had a lot of time now to really think about the gaming system centralization, and they've not really done it. They've tried to some extent. I mean, like Alpha Strike, I think you'd say, is a really interesting gaming system, and it's something that seems to have a lot of success. But I want to see them go further than that. I want to see them really kind of, like, for instance, like give a competitive scene the ability to flourish, and you can only do that by creating balance. And BattleTech is a ridiculous ridiculously unbalanced game. Now, for me, as a casual player who plays just fun, I'm fine with that, but I'm talking about the good of the game. You need to define really tight rule systems where you say, okay, well, we're not having 100 of things in different places. And I don't give them any heat on this, and there's no one is trying to. They're not like Games Workshop where they're creating, new codexes every 3 months that then replace old codexes. They've not done this out of just to try and fleece the people that play the game. They've done it because it's just had so many different people creating gaming systems and new rule sets, and they've either been going down the role play route or they've been going down the tabletop route. It's been owned by multiple companies, which obviously has caused a lot of historical trauma in terms of the gaming systems. But in general, I think that's something that if they're not going to take the risk on the models and really start to try pump money into that to get money out of it, then that's the one thing that they can do. They can really kind of sit around the table and discuss how they actually centralize the game. So that's basically what I think is the good and the bad of Catalyst. To surmise though, and I'll sum this up in a couple of minutes, hopefully anyway, because we've just gone over an hour. I think Catalyst have been superb for BattleTech. I think that you just look at where BattleTech was. I'm saying this without any experience because I stepped out of the game and have now stepped back in. The fact that people like me have stepped back in is quite a good sign, dare I say. And a lot of that is to do with Catalyst. A lot of that to do is with their marketing, their strategies. Yes, they get some things wrong. What company doesn't? I would ask that everyone keep in the knowledge that Catalyst are a really small company. And they don't have vast numbers on the ground. Sorry, my chair's squeaking. They don't have hundreds of people who can work in PR and marketing and admin and things like that. I'm guessing it's a pretty lo-fi studio out on the west coast of America, and everyone just kind of chips in. They're probably working incredibly hard. They're all probably very overworked. Because it's something that they love. And I think how we can best support them, I think, is to try and create some buzz around them and give them, whether it's direct or indirect feedback. This is obviously an indirect feedback because I'm speaking to the ether here. But if anyone ever does watch this, I mean, from Catalyst, that's my 2 cents. That's where I think they can improve. I'd hope, and I think they do listen to I know they listen to the fans as well. And it's not about agreeing or onboarding or just saying, oh, they've got to do everything I say, otherwise they're wrong. They'll know way more about it than I do. But I think it's having that kind of dialogue with your fan base, with a sensible fan base. I'm not talking about the spoilt brat areas of the fan base, and they exist everywhere. But people who have kind of got good intentions and want to see it flourish and what their ideas for it are. And just try to get into that slipstream. And the takeaway from this, what I'd hope kind of sings the most is really that last point that I built up to, which is they really need to create a competitive scene or help a competitive scene flourish. Because at the moment, everything I watch with BattleTech, everything I see, it's all friendly play. There's a couple of guys that I've seen who will run relatively competitive tournaments, but it all looks very most of them will have to in-house rule it, which is no good at all, because if you can't have a competitive play where you're using in-house rules, because that gives a massive advantage to whoever's created the in-house rule. So you need that standardized system that people can you can turn up at a store with a lance of mechs and say, right, this is 3,500 battle value. Yours is 2,900. So whatever that 600 differences, for instance, they've just released these cards, which I bought a couple of from Catalyst a few weeks ago, where you can get you can put minefields on there and use air support, and it simplifies that gaming system, which is great. Maybe your 600 points gives you access to artillery or something like that. Someone has to sit down, do the math on it, and work out what advantages and disadvantages you get if there is a discrepancy in the battle value. And only by doing that and by play testing it and just getting all the math very tight will they ever be able to create what I'd consider a competitive scene. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that and my video for this week. So I'm kind of expecting that next week there might be some news, maybe not next week, but sometime over November. I'm hoping that Catalyst drop some big news, whether it's like another Kickstarter or something to do with the retail, we'll wait and see. But very exciting times for BattleTech. I know that there's still frustrations going on, and you know, the retail thing, it's still not there, it's still not all on the shelf or anything like that, but I'm feeling still like really optimistic about it, and I'm very excited. Like, I think next March, April, I'll have everything that I want. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting all that stuff through. In the meantime, I'm concentrating exclusively on Blood Bowl. I've painted 10 teams now out of 18, so I've still got 8 more to go. Love painting those as well, but it takes so much longer than the old mechs, so that's keeping me very, very busy. Anyway, I'll bid you all a fond farewell, and I'll hopefully catch you again in the next vlog.